My name is Samantha Parker. I'm 32 years old. And until last month, I thought I knew exactly where my life was headed. I had a husband I trusted, a career I loved, and a family I believed would always have my back. But everything I believed shattered at a dinner table on my birthday, when my younger sister stood up in front of my family and announced she was pregnant with my husband's child. Let me take you back to that night. It was supposed to be a small family gathering at a cozy restaurant in downtown Chicago. My parents had made the reservation, and I had spent extra time getting ready wearing the blue dress, Kyle once said, brought out my eyes. I even curled my hair the way he liked it. I was hopeful. We hadn't been close lately. But I thought maybe this dinner could help us reconnect. Kyle texted to say he'd meet me there, claimed he was stuck on a last-minute work call. I arrived alone. My parents were already seated. My mom gave me her usual once-over and suggested I reapply my lipstick before photos. My dad handed me a gift bag and muttered something about how it was just a little something they picked up last minute. It was all very typical. Jessica wasn't there yet. No surprise. She always made a point of arriving late, so all eyes would be on her. Then came the entrance. Jessica walked into the restaurant wearing a red dress tight enough to be a second skin. Her blonde hair bounced perfectly. But it wasn't just her outfit or her entrance that stopped me cold, it was who walked in behind her. Kyle. My husband. He held the door open for her, his hand resting just a little too long on her lower back. They were laughing about something. Walking too close. Looking too comfortable. Ran into each other in the parking lot. Jessica said, kissing my cheek like it was just another family dinner. Kyle sat next to me, offered an awkward smile, and said, "Happy birthday, Sam." He smelled like he'd just showered. Fresh cologne. Not a hint of stress from that supposed work call. I tried to stay calm. We ordered. We talked. My parents chatted about their latest cruise. Jessica interrupted with stories about her glamorous job and celebrity clients. Kyle barely spoke. When I reached under the table to touch his knee, he flinched, covered my hand with his. But it felt clammy, distant. And then came dessert. Chocolate lava cake, my favorite. The waiter lit a single candle. My dad raised his glass and toasted me to Samantha. Always responsible. Always stable. Stable. Not brilliant. Not kind. Not strong. Just stable. Like a coffee table. I was still swallowing that when Jessica stood up. "I have an announcement," she said, smoothing her dress over her stomach. I wasn't planning to say this tonight. But since we're all here, I'm pregnant. The silence hit like a brick wall. My mom gasped. My dad smiled wide. Then she added, "And the father is Kyle." Just like that. No hesitation. No shame. And in that moment, something inside me cracked. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just picked up my fork and took a bite of my birthday cake. Because while they were celebrating their moment of triumph, they had no idea I was about to take it all away. Growing up, I was never the dramatic one. That was Jessica's role. She was the star of every room she entered. I was the dependable older sister. The one who got straight A's. The one who followed the rules. But in my house, being dependable meant being invisible. Jessica was 4 years younger than me. And from the moment she was born, she became the center of gravity in our family. She cried louder, demanded more. And in return, she got more. More attention. More affection. More forgiveness. When she scribbled with crayons, my mother beamed. Look how artistic Jessica is. But when I brought home perfect grades, I got a pat on the head and a flat. That's nice. Sam. My dad coached Jessica's softball team. He never made it to one of my debate finals. At first, I told myself I was overreacting, that maybe I just wasn't the kind of daughter who needed a cheering section. But the truth is, it hurt. And that hurt didn't fade with age. It calcified. Jessica developed a habit early on. If I had it, she wanted it. My favorite stuffed animal disappeared and magically ended up in her room. A sweater I saved 3 weeks' allowance for. She wore it to school the day after I did. I'd complain. But the family response was always the same. Just share with your sister. I learned early that I wasn't allowed to protect my boundaries, not without being called selfish. When I got the lead role in the school play, Jessica suddenly became interested in acting. My parents enrolled her in expensive theater classes and bragged about her monologues. They never even came to my opening night. By the time I graduated high school, I knew I needed to leave. Not just the house but the orbit of Jessica's chaos. I moved 3 states away to attend Northwestern. It was the first time I'd ever felt like I could breathe. And it was there that I met Kyle. He was nothing like the boys I'd known in high school. Thoughtful. Attentive. The kind of man who opened doors and asked follow-up questions. For the first time, I felt truly seen. Looking back now, I wonder if that's what Jessica saw too and couldn't stand. Kyle and I got married 2 years after graduation. It was a small ceremony by Lake Michigan. Simple. Elegant. Everything I had dreamed of. He held my hands during our vows like I was the only person on earth. For a while, it really did feel like we were a team. We moved into a modest home in the suburbs of Chicago. Built routines. Made weekend pancakes. Shared grocery runs and silent looks across crowded rooms that said, "I see you." He wasn't flashy. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. That's what I loved about him. The first year of marriage was solid. Comfortable. We had agreed to wait a few years before having children. Financially, we were still climbing. Emotionally, I assumed we were aligned. But now I wonder if that wait was more his idea than mine. It started subtly. Kyle began coming home later. Said he was working toward a promotion. His phone, once left charging on the kitchen counter, now stayed face down. He jumped when I walked into the room mid-text. Passwords changed. Hugs grew shorter. Kisses faded to routine. I noticed it all, but convinced myself it was stress. Marriage gets like this sometimes. Right. Then there were the calls, frequent numbers I didn't recognize on his phone bill. I saw the flash of long blonde hair on his jacket once. Not Mina. Not anyone we knew. I'd walk into the laundry room and catch the scent of perfume that wasn't mine, clinging to his collar. Still, I reasoned with myself. Jessica has blonde hair. She lives in the city. Maybe he bumped into her. Maybe I was being paranoid. And yet, that tiny voice, the one I'd silenced since childhood, kept whispering, "Look closer." He pulled away just as I was leaning in. I tried suggesting date nights, anniversary getaways, little things to bring us back. He always had a reason to decline. The timing isn't right. Work is insane right now. We'll plan something soon. But soon never came. What did come, however, it was my birthday dinner, an evening I had foolishly pinned all my hopes on. I had no idea that night would be both a collapse and a beginning. The restaurant was one of my favorites, brick walls. Soft lighting. The smell of rosemary and garlic in the air. It had always felt like a sanctuary. That night, it became the site of my personal demolition. I arrived first. Kyle had texted that he'd be late. Again blaming work. My parents were already at the table. They greeted me with a warmth that always felt filtered. Polite. Conditional. Jessica, as expected, was missing. "She'll be here," my mother said. Sipping her wine, She likes to make an entrance. That, at least, was true. I smiled politely, trying to ignore the hollow ache in my chest. I had done everything right. Made peace. Showed up. Wore the blue dress. Told myself this would be a new beginning. I checked my phone. Still no update from Kyle. Then, laughter floated in from the entrance, familiar. High-pitched. Exaggerated. Jessica. I turned, expecting her alone. But she wasn't. Kyle walked in beside her. Too close. Smiling, that nervous smile he used when he knew he was in trouble. Her hand brushed his arm. His hand hovered at her lower back. My stomach dropped. They approached the table like nothing was wrong. Jessica kissed my cheek with precision. Not leaving a mark. Ran into Kyle in the parking lot. She chirped. Kyle avoided my eyes. Happy birthday. Sam. I couldn't speak. I smiled. Nodded. Took a slow breath. Dinner continued. My parents dominated the conversation. Cruise photos. HOA gossip. Jessica interjected every few minutes with glamorous stories of her job. While Kyle sat there, barely speaking, I tried to hold his hand under the table. He flinched, then forced a smile and placed his hand over mine. It was cold, moist, mechanical. The food arrived. Conversation buzzed. I kept waiting for Kyle to say something, anything that resembled normal. But he didn't. I could feel something building. Then came the cake. Chocolate lava. A small candle flickered on top. My dad raised his glass. To our Samantha. Always responsible. Always stable. Stable. Like an old desk. Like a dishwasher. Jessica was practically bouncing in her seat. I have an announcement, she said. Standing. My mother's eyes lit up. My father leaned forward. Kyle shifted in his chair. Jessica smoothed the front of her red dress. I wasn't planning to share this yet. But since we're all here. She smiled wide. Eyes locked on mine. I'm pregnant. Gasps. Claps. My mom covered her mouth. Oh, honey. That's wonderful. My dad raised his glass again. A grandchild. Jessica held up a finger. There's more. She paused. Then dropped it. Kyle's the father. Time stopped. The restaurant noise faded into a muffled blur. My mother froze mid-applause. My father's glass hung in the air. Kyle stared at the table. Jessica beamed. We've been seeing each other for months, she said. We're going to be a family now. I couldn't feel my hands. I couldn't hear my own breath. My voice, when it came, was soft. Jessica reached across the table and placed her hand over Kyle's. I wanted to scream, to flip the table, to throw my water in her face. But I didn't. I picked up my fork, cut into the molten center of my cake, and took a bite. You've certainly given me a birthday to remember, I said calmly. And in their confusion, Jessica's twitching smile. Kyle's pale silence, I saw it. The one thing they never expected? I wasn't broken. I was just getting started. The table sat in stunned silence as I finished another slow bite of chocolate lava cake. Jessica blinked, clearly expecting an explosion. A scene. Tears. Something she could twist into another chapter of poor Kyle. His wife just couldn't handle it. Instead, I set my fork down and took a sip of water. There's something I think you all should know before we continue this little celebration, I said. Kyle stiffened beside me. Jessica tilted her head like a curious child. My mother, still recovering from the whiplash of emotions, reached for her wine. I folded my hands in my lap. I've known about the affair for 3 months. Kyle choked. Jessica's smug smile slipped. My father muttered, "What?" I turned to Kyle. "You really should consider changing your email password more often. Using our anniversary, not exactly secure. Especially once you started acting shady." Jessica's hand flew to her bracelet, the gold one she claimed a client had given her. I smiled. "I also hired a private investigator. Davis and Associates. They're quite good. They have photos of you entering Jessica's building 27 times. And recordings of your late-night calls." Kyle flushed. "You've been spying on me." "No?" I corrected. "I've been protecting myself. Something you clearly didn't care to do." Jessica crossed her arms. "That's a massive invasion of privacy. Like sleeping with your sister's husband isn't—" Silence again. I reached into my purse and pulled out a folded envelope. "And one more thing," I said, sliding the document across the table. "This is Kyle's medical report." Jessica's brow furrowed. "What?" "Kyle had a vasectomy 2 years ago. We made the decision together. No kids. No surprises." My mother gasped. Jessica looked between the paper and Kyle. "That's not true." "Read it," I said calmly. "Sacred Heart Medical Center. Dr. Reynolds. March 2023. Kyle looked sick. "Sam. I can explain." "Don't." I cut him off. "You didn't want children. Remember you said responsibility wasn't your thing." Jessica's voice cracked. "You had a vasectomy. Why didn't you tell me?" Kyle mumbled. "I thought we were being careful. I didn't think it mattered." "It mattered," I replied. Jessica's face had drained of all color. "So, Jess," I said, leaning forward slightly, "if you're pregnant, and I don't doubt that you are, then congratulations. But not to Kyle. He's shooting blanks." My father blinked. My mother sat motionless, the wine glass trembling in her hand. Jessica whispered, "You're lying." I shrugged. "Then get a DNA test." Jessica stood up suddenly, knocking her chair into the table. "I need some air." She rushed toward the exit. Kyle looked like he wanted to follow. "Go ahead," I said. "You two deserve each other." He hesitated, then stood and walked after her. My parents sat stunned. My father finally spoke. "Samantha, I don't know what to say." "There's nothing to say," I replied, picking up my fork. The cake had gone cold, but I finished it anyway. It was still my birthday. After all, and this was the best gift I could have given myself. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I checked into a quiet hotel downtown. Somewhere with thick curtains. No memories. And silence. The kind of silence that wraps around you like a blanket when your world has finally stopped spinning. The next morning, my phone had exploded calls from Kyle. Jessica. My parents. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I called Patricia Donovan. "It's time," I told her. Patricia, my divorce attorney, was calm and efficient. She'd been waiting for this call ever since I'd walked into her office 3 months ago with a folder of screenshots and surveillance reports. By 11 a.m., the paperwork was in motion. While the legal wheels turned, I began the process of untangling myself from the wreckage. 3 days later, I returned to our house with a moving truck and 2 friends. Kyle was at work. I left only with what was mine: clothes, family heirlooms, the bookshelf I'd built with my dad, and a few kitchen items that had sentimental value. Everything else could rot. I left Kyle's wedding ring on the nightstand with a note: "Patricia will be in touch." I moved into my friend Megan's guest room. She didn't ask questions. just made space for my boxes and told me to stay as long as I needed. One night, as we were folding laundry together, she asked, "Do you think Jessica really believed Kyle was the father?" I paused. I think Jessica believes whatever serves her best in the moment. Megan nodded. And Kyle? Kyle believes what's easiest. It became my mantra. A way to stay grounded. Every time I was tempted to answer one of Kyle's 2 a.m. texts or feel guilt over Jessica's tearful voicemails, I reminded myself they made their choices. And I was finally making mine. When my parents called, my mother pushed for forgiveness. "Your sister is struggling. She didn't mean to hurt you. You've always been the stronger one." "No," I said gently but firmly. "I've always been the quieter one. That doesn't mean I didn't bleed." My father surprised me. "You're right to walk away, Sam," he said. "But don't carry their weight any longer. It's not yours." And for once, I listened. 1 year later, I stood in the hallway of my new apartment, no longer new, really, but entirely mine, and looked at my reflection in the full-length mirror. I barely recognized the woman staring back. Not because she was broken, but because she wasn't. The divorce had finalized 6 months earlier. Kyle, faced with undeniable evidence and a rock-solid prenup, had quietly accepted the terms. He moved to Denver. Started over. From what I heard, he was already dating someone new. I didn't care. Jessica gave birth to a baby boy. Leo. DNA tests confirmed what we already knew. Kyle wasn't the father. The real one, a pharmaceutical executive, and eventually left his wife and moved in with Jessica. Whether it would last? I couldn't say. Jessica and I weren't close. But she'd sent a letter a few months back. Handwritten. Apologetics. Honest. For once, I always thought you had it all. Sam, she wrote. Now I know you just carried it all. It didn't fix everything. But it was a start. I visited her once. Held Leo. Saw pieces of our father in his eyes. When Jessica asked if I'd be his godmother, I said yes. Not for her but for him. Because some cycles deserve to be broken. I used to think betrayal would destroy me. But it didn't. It stripped away everything false, every illusion about my marriage. My family. Even myself. And in the ashes, I found something stronger. I learned that boundaries aren't walls, they're doors. Ones I get to choose when and how to open. I learned that forgiveness is a choice, not an obligation. And I learned that the most powerful revenge is rebuilding a life so full of peace. It leaves no room for the people who once tried to break you. So if you've ever survived betrayal, like I did, don't just survive. Rise. Rebuild. And start again.